are going to make a Southwest chicken wrap that we're gonna kind of fry up on both sides, so like a flauta almost. And then we're gonna make some pumpkin muffins because my kids have been asking for it. And originally I was gonna make pumpkin muffins earlier this week, but I had no pumpkin. So I had to get pumpkin, but now we're back to making them. Okay, we are going to add in about a half a cup. There's a little bit of my sourdough discard. A half a cup of my sourdough discard for this. Here we go. And then I'll feed it up so that, because I'm running low on it, I've got to get my big jar out of the fridge and feed it up. I just have yet to do that. Okay. So we've got just about a half a cup here of our sourdough discard. We're gonna add it in.
You have a question? What is discard?
So discard is when you're making sourdough bread, you have to use a starter, which is fermented flour. So water, equal parts water and flour that have been sitting out on your counter for at least a week until the fermentation process starts. And then discard is what you throw away before you feed it, because otherwise you'd have copious amounts of sourdough starter. So that's just what the throw away part of your starter is. So we're using a half a cup of the starter or the discard. Starter just means it's active. Discard means that you're gonna throw it away and you haven't fed it yet. And now we're gonna add in a fourth a cup of melted butter, 2 eggs. We're gonna do all of our wet ingredients first. So 1 and 2. 1 little shell in there. There we go. And then we are going to add in a cup of pumpkin puree, which is about half the can or so. I'm going to eyeball my cup because I always find it such a pain to measure something out. It gets another container messy. The only time I really do measure out is with my sourdough discard to be more accurate. But I'm just gonna eyeball what I think a cup is, which is roughly half this can, a little bit more than half. So that should be about a cup of pumpkin puree. I'm gonna save that because we're gonna make pumpkin scones with it. I need the spoon though, which is kind of nice. I find that 1 can of pumpkin puree, I can make both pumpkin scones and pumpkin muffins. So it's kind of a dualsies. We're gonna mix this up, kind of get our wet ingredients. There's that shell. I knew. Perfect. Don't want to leave that in there because I know one of my kids will eat it and then they'll tell me I tried to kill them. Okay, it was like growing up, we'd have like chicken noodle soup or something and my mom would miss a bone in there and I'd always be like, oh, you tried to kill me. So we're gonna mix this up until all of that egg and that pumpkin is mixed around with that melted butter and our sourdough discard. Here we go. Then we are going to add in our vanilla and our baking soda, our pumpkin spice, and our salt. So we need a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm actually gonna do my baking soda first because I'm gonna get it wet. So we need a teaspoon of baking soda. A teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then a half a teaspoon of salt. And then a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice, which is a blend of all of those festive spices that makes things taste so delicious and fall-y at the time. So we want a whole tablespoon of this so that these flavors really come through on our pumpkin muffin, because you've got to shake it up. This does not want me to get out. Let me give a little tap. There we go. You know how they just kind of sit there. So we got a whole tablespoon of our pumpkin pie spice, which is what? Cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, allspice, mace, and cloves. So all those good spices. We're gonna mix this in, and then we're gonna add in a cup of brown sugar. And then once the brown sugar is mixed in, we'll add in our flour. And I'm just gonna make sure I just scrape all the way around my bowl. I love these spatulas, are from like Williams and Sonoma. I've had them for like 20 years. I mean, they lasted at least. But I love them because they're like the perfect shape for scraping your bowl, but also have like a good scoop on it. Okay. So we're gonna add in a cup of brown sugar. Grab my measuring cup. So this is a half cup, so I'm gonna do 2 half cups. Make sure you firmly push your brown sugar down because brown sugar is a bit more moist because you know it's mixed, you know, it's the sugar mixed with like either molasses or kind of that raw things. That one wasn't quite as packed down as hard as I wanted. It lays more fluffy, and so you gotta pack it down to make sure you're getting the right sweetness. So we're gonna mix in our brown sugar here. And this is what's gonna really give that nice rich flavor to the pumpkin muffins. So you really wanna use brown sugar over white sugar just because it has that rich flavor, that molasses flavor to it. There we go. And now we're gonna add in our flour, and we're just gonna barely mix it until we see the flour is kind of mixed, but we want it to be lumpy and chunky because that's gonna give us a nice light and fluffy muffin. And I do have my oven preheated to 350 degrees so that we'll be ready to pop in. So we're gonna add in 1 cup of flour. Take these guys out of the way. And then again, don't over mix your batter. You want it to be thick and chunky. I prefer mixing it by hand versus using a hand mixer because it's really easy to over mix with a hand mixer.
You have a question? Where do you get your recipes and do you post them?
So my recipes are really just created over time through trial and error. You know, I find something, I take an original like recipe, you know, sometimes they're like what, Franny Farmer cookbook. I had that cookbook forever, but I take a base recipe and I adopt it to where I finally love it. And then they're like that. So for posting my recipes, occasionally I send out a freebie recipe for everybody, but most of my recipes are behind my membership, and we post about 3 recipe cards a week for our different recipes. But we do always post the videos up, so you can always watch again and recreate the recipes at home by watching again. Okay, we are going to put in our muffin liners. Now you could also do this in a loaf pan or a mini loaf pan, but then the baking time would of course take longer. So muffins are great because these will be done in 20 minutes, which is nice, quick and easy, versus if you were to do a loaf pan, that's gonna be closer to 45 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes. Mini loaf pans would be about 23 minutes. Okay, and then I'm going to spoon my batter in, and then we'll top with pumpkin seeds. There we go. I'm actually gonna go switch to a metal spoon. I find metal spoons are much easier for scooping in the batter. Oh, of course, I say that and I make a big mess anyways. So we're gonna fill these up. I'm gonna try to get them as evenly filled throughout, and then we'll go back over and add a bit more to each one. I always like to fill my muffins up to the top as possible, as high as possible. That's gonna give me the biggest dome on my muffin. If you just fill them like 2/3 of the way, they're not gonna get a big puff up. And this recipe makes a dozen good size muffins. And since it's got a butter base, it's much thicker than if you were to use oil. But I find that butter just gives you a much more delicious end product, a better texture than oil. Here we go. We're gonna just go back through. Now, of the ones that if you're gonna leave any a little less filled, these middle two ones are the ones you wanna leave less filled because they don't get as much heat as the outer ones. And so these two are your ones that are most likely to be a bit underdone when you're baking. So if you just leave them just a smidge less underfilled, they'll cook up perfectly with the other ones. Let me just go now and scrape this last bit with my spatula. Don't want any of this stuff to go to waste. These, I don't even expect them to last till tomorrow. My kids love pumpkin muffins. Our applesauce muffins that we made earlier this week didn't even last till dinner time. They went so fast. There we go. Okay. We've got them filled up. And then I'm just going to wipe off the areas that are right here, because if you don't kind of wipe it off, then you're gonna have to scrub and clean them off when they've like burnt on. So just take a paper towel, wipe around the edges, and you'll be there. We're gonna give it a little shake to kind of even them out, and then we're gonna add our raw pumpkin seeds to the top. This gives them a little crunch, and they're delicious, but you gotta use raw. Otherwise, they're not going to, they'll be too crunchy. And we're gonna sprinkle these right over the top. And I would say it's about maybe 1/4 of a cup for all of them, plus or minus, you know, the seeds, like how many, if you want them a lot of seeds or versus a little. I'm gonna leave a few of them without so that Teddy, who's recovering from his tonsillectomy, can have some, because he actually really enjoyed the the applesauce muffin. So I'm gonna leave him 2 for him to have without the seeds. Okay. So we're gonna pop these in the oven at 350 for 20 minutes. And then I'm gonna pop, when I put these in, I'm gonna put the muffins, the 2 without the seeds, towards the front of my oven, because the front of my oven doesn't cook as hot. And because they don't have the seeds on top, they're gonna pop sooner. So I'm gonna set my timer for 20 minutes. Oven's still on, we're good to go. And now let's make our Southwest chicken wraps, or kind of chicken flautas. So let's start by, we're gonna start heating up some oil in here, because we're gonna cook up our chicken here in just a second. And I want it to be nice and ready for us to put in there. So I'm gonna turn my burner on to about a 6. And then we're gonna kind of cut this chicken up into pretty small pieces. I wanna kind of cube it up, because we are gonna be putting these inside tortillas. And when you're eating like a tortilla, a wrap, you don't want a huge piece of chicken. You want a smaller piece of chicken that is easier to bite versus taking off the entire, like, you know, bite it and then you have half your sandwich come out or half your wrap come out. So I'm just gonna cube these up into little pieces. That way, they'll cook up much faster, and B, they'll be much easier to take bites with. It's fine. Like sometimes I've made like, you know, when you eat fajitas and you have like a long strip of meat, but it's hard to bite through because you take a bite and then that whole strip of meat will come with you. So if you do this nice and small, this will go great with also the vegetables that we're going to be throwing in there, and then kind of like nice flavors with our cheese. We're going to use cheddar cheese today in them, but pepper jack or Monterey or Kobe would all go great with this as well. So just nice, small, bite-sized pieces, like a little bit smaller than that. Think about when you go to Chipotle and you give your little chicken there and they're teeny tiny pieces. That's essentially what you want. Okay. And I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. And now we're gonna season them up with a couple things. I'm gonna use a little bit of Worcestershire, which has a vinegar base, which will add a nice moisture to it, keep the meat nice and juicy. So it's gonna be about, I wanna say maybe a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half. And then we're gonna add a little bit of liquid smoke. So liquid smoke adds a nice smoky flavor as if you'd smoke the meat, but a little goes a long way. So don't add too much. So I'm gonna actually pour some in my lid to control it a little better, but I want about a half a teaspoon. And then I'm just gonna pour it over, and that will give it a nice smoky flavor, which I think will play really well for this dish. Then we're gonna do a little bit of onion powder. I'm gonna shake this over. It's gonna be about a teaspoon, so a couple good shakes. We're gonna use some garlic salt, and this is gonna be the meat base for our Southwest wraps. We're gonna do a nice shake over of garlic salt, so about, I wanna say it's gonna be about a half a teaspoon. And then we're gonna use some taco seasoning. This is just like Costco's big tub of taco seasoning, but you could use any one. And we're doing a nice little shake over as well. And then last but not least, we're gonna use some Mexican Fiesta seasoning, which has just chili, tomato, and cumin in, which will just give us a bit more depth in it. This I got from Whole Foods. And we're gonna do, let's see, this is doing the same thing. We're getting down to the bottom of it, and sometimes they like to stick. Let's go grab a fork. That means my house is humid. There we go. So we're gonna add about a half a teaspoon or so. Now, let's kind of coat all of our meat up in these seasonings. And then we can kind of throw them in to start sauteing. They don't need to marinate long because we used quite a bit of spices on them. So they'll have a nice, like, strong flavor when you cook them up. And since the chicken is so small as well, it will those flavors will just sink in really, really fast versus if you're doing a full chicken breast. Okay, so we've got our chicken all marinated up here in our kind of our Southwest spices. And now I'm gonna throw them into my oil that should be nice and hot. There we go. I'm gonna grab some tongs, we'll spread them out, and we're gonna let them kind of saute up. There we go. You can already smell the smoky smell has this lovely kind of aroma. So I'm gonna spread them out, and we're gonna let them kind of cook over. I've got my burner on a 7, so we're gonna let it cook over on a 7. And while we're doing that, we're gonna prep up our vegetables that are gonna go into this wrap. So I've got some corn that I have defrosted. I've got some sweet peppers, and I have some green onions. So these are what we're gonna be adding into our wrap, and then we're gonna make a little guacamole to dip everything in. So let's get our peppers going. You could also use one big bell pepper for this if you wanted, but I had these in my house because I love sweet peppers. I think they have, they don't have as bitter of a flavor that brown or bell peppers have. They're, you know, sweeter, more mild, and I think they're just lovely. I'm going to kind of chop them up into small pieces. I want roughly everything to kind of be the same size as the corn in there, so that your chicken is the bigger chunks. We'll kind of do, so just a smaller dice on these. Now when I cut my peppers, I always cut them from the inside versus from the outside in. So I will cut them in half, and then I flip them over here. And the reason I do that is the inside of your pepper has more of a grip on it than the outside, which is very smooth. And so you're less likely to slip with your blade when you're cutting, and you can go a bit faster. Okay, the last 2. And then we're gonna flip our chicken because it's looking like it's pretty good here. I'm gonna just rotate a little bit, let this side get some. But the nice thing about this is cutting the chicken up so small, it's gonna cook up really, really fast. Okay, I'm gonna get a spatula and flip these. So we have those nice kind of sear on it with those kind of that crispy edging, which will be delicious. Gives you a lot of flavor and body in it. And that's what you get that from cooking over a high heat, and then also making sure that you don't have too much meat in here to crowd your pan. And we're gonna let these saute for a second, and then I'll pull the chicken out, and then we're gonna saute up the rest of our vegetables, and then we'll throw the chicken back in. I want to leave the chicken out so that it doesn't overcook and become really hard. I want it to be nice and juicy. Get our green onions chopped up. So we're just doing a simple kind of slice down on these. And then I'll just go a couple more times over. And let me get a little bowl now for our chicken. Now, like I said, because the chicken is cut up so small, it takes hardly any time for it to cook up, which is really nice because this makes it a meal that you can get done pretty quick. Okay. So I'm going to leave my heat on. Oops.
Sharon just sent you some gifts.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. We always appreciate that here. Okay, let's get our chicken up. I'm gonna scoop it up. And the reason, again, I'm taking it out is so that it will be nice and tender when we pop it back in there. Versus if you leave it cooking with the rest of the vegetables won't get as good of a cook, and then these will get overcooked. And I know sometimes you feel like that's kind of a bit of a crazy extra step, removing meat from the pan when you're gonna be putting it back in. But the reason is if you don't, the rest of the food just won't cook as well. So we've got in there, we should have enough oil in there left over. So I'm gonna throw in my peppers first, and we're gonna let those kind of saute up for just 30 seconds or so, which will give it a nice time to kind of crisp them up nicely. And then we'll throw in our corn and last our green onions. There we go. Got those all in. I'm gonna let them kind of sit there. I'm gonna get a smidge more oil. Just about a half a teaspoon. But I don't want it to be so low that they'll kind of char. There we go. So I'm just gonna give them and then spread them out. And then we're gonna add in our corn. So this is just frozen corn that I defrosted, but you could always use canned corn, except canned corn is a bit sweet. And then fresh corn, you'd have to blanch it first to use it in this recipe. We're gonna add in our corn. We're gonna let this kind of sear up for just a second. And I'm gonna add some spices to our corn. So I'm gonna use a little bit of our fiesta seasoning and just kind of sprinkle it over the top. And that was probably like a half a teaspoon. I'm gonna use a little bit of my taco seasoning. So all those same great spices that I have on our chicken. We're gonna sprinkle it over the top here. That way they all have a really great flavor. And then a little bit of, I'm grabbing that garlic salt so that it's kind of salted up. And just a little sprinkle over it. There we go. Now, if you love beans, you could throw in some black beans here, because I've kind of modeled these off of the Rainforest Cafe Southwest egg rolls that they make. They have these chicken egg rolls there as part of an appetizer crust, and everybody in my family loves them. And those have beans in it, but my family would prefer them without beans, so I did not add it. But you could add in about a half a cup of beans in here, and that would make, add a little bit more fiber and protein. Okay. We're gonna add in our green onions here. We're gonna let them saute just for a little bit to let them bring out some of those nice flavors, and then we're gonna throw our chicken back in. Okay. Set those out, kind of spread it out. And I'm cooking this on about a 7, so pretty high heat, which is the reason why I'm doing it so high heat is because I want those to kind of like sear really fast versus a slow where they're going to get more soft. I want them to have like kind of keep a little bit of their firmness in there. Okay, let's flip that. Looking good. We're going to throw our chicken right back in here. Perfect. And then our binder for our wrap is we're gonna add in just a smidge of sour cream that will hold everything together. Those flavors kind of mellow them out. So we're gonna add about, there's a tablespoon, so about a tablespoon and a half. And this is, I'm gonna turn the heat down. And this is gonna act kind of as a way to keep all of those spices married together and delicious. And you can always add more. You could add up to 1/4 of a cup depending on how creamy you like it. But I just wanted it to be just enough to kind of mild out some of those kind of chili powder, like those flavors in there. Okay, beautiful.
You have a question? What's an alternative to sour cream?
So you could always use plain yogurt. You could make a creme fraiche using cream and lime juice. I don't know if we're looking for a dairy-free alternative, I'm not 100% what you could do for that, unless there's like a dairy-free sour cream that you could use. But sour cream or just cream, you could do that with a little bit of lime juice, would work great for it. Okay, so now is the fun part that we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of stuff our tortillas here. And then we're gonna put some cheese in them, and then we'll kind of saute them off kind of like, or fry them off like a flauta or a taquito. Now with these, you don't want to overfill them when we do it, because if you overfill them, they'll fall apart. So I like to put a little bit of cheese here.
You have a question? Would softened cream cheese work?
Yeah, you could probably do that. That would work well. You might need to cook it a little bit longer for those to, to cream up, but yes. Okay, so we've got a little bit in here. I do my cheese on the top and a little on the bottom, and then we are just going to fold it up, and then I always like to fold it over like that because I'm gonna fry them face down in my pan. I'm gonna slide this over here because if you're in the kitchen, you like to prefer one side that you cook on. So I'm gonna add a little bit of oil in here, like a tablespoon or so, in our pan, and we're gonna heat it up. And then we'll start, I'm gonna assemble a few more, and we'll be ready to kind of cook them up, and then we'll make our guacamole to dip them in for it. And you can also dip them in like sour cream or salsa. Those all work really well. You could also throw your cheese into the skillet and then just spoon it into your mixture that way as well. Now, some people have issues with them like falling apart when they're cooking, and a lot of times they use toothpicks to hold them together. I have found that mine work out fairly well just by making sure I put them down face down when I'm frying them up. And again, don't overfill them or you'll have them falling apart. They won't hold up well. You can also use even bigger tortillas if you want to, you know, just as long as your pan will hold them. Okay, so we've got this. I want to make sure it's nice and hot before I put them in, because you want to make sure your oil is hot before you cook it up, because if it's cold, then you're not going to get that crisp up seal on the bottom half and they're more likely to fall apart. Let's get a little water and test it. Yeah, we're getting there. Pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to just take it and just lie it face down into the oil. And we're gonna let them kind of fry up on here. And like I already lost part of mine, so I'm just gonna actually put it in here with it. It's like the tacos where people always say you eat a taco and you have leftovers to make another taco. And I'll prep these few in here. This one's a little guy. We'll get 3 more up, then we're gonna work on our guacamole to kind of dip them in.
You have a question? Could this be air fried?
Yes, you could definitely air fry them. If you're doing it in an air fryer, I would definitely use the toothpicks to hold them together, because since they're not gonna be like pressed down, they might fold apart in there, and you don't want to have all that mess in your air fryer. Add in our little chicken Southwest base here. And then we do a little cheese on top. You could also easily make this a quesadilla. I like to do it in this form so that you can dip it into the guacamole. Turn this guy down. My guy is a little hot. There we go. So we've got it nice and kind of toasted up. And they cook up really fast, which is the nice thing about it, but it will have a nice crunch on it and will be so delicious. You grab a plate to be able to pull these first ones out, and a bowl to make our guacamole. And I will say I'm gonna cook them around a 4 now, now that the oil is nice and hot. And then I will like pop them out. But before, I'm gonna turn these down, make sure they don't cook up too fast while we grab our pumpkin muffins. Okay, so here are our gorgeous pumpkin muffins. I'm just gonna give them a nice tap and see if I've got my firm tops, which I do. If your tops feel a little jelly or have a lot of give, that means they're undercooked, and you just need to cook them for like 2 to 3 more minutes longer.
Yeah. You have a question? What are your thoughts on using tin foil in an air fryer?
You know, I don't know if I've ever used it in an air fryer before, but I know my oven right here says it has an air fryer setting on it, and it tells me that I shouldn't use aluminum foil in it. But I also don't know if that's because it's connected to the microwave, since it's all one unit. But I feel like people have used those little, like, you know, metal pans and put it in. But I have to say, we did air fryer when we were remodeling this kitchen. I used an air fryer, a crock pot, I had a hot plate, and I made all my food for our family for like 6 months off of that. And I have not used an air fryer since then because of it. I use my oven setting of the air fryer, but it is, I've been away from that for a while because I'm like, we ate so many meals with it. But look, beautiful golden kind of crust. And you see how when you put them face down, they hold together. So I'm gonna add in, let's see, let's make 1 more and we'll pop those in, and then we can make our guacamole for this. Because that will be delicious. And I will say you could definitely go, these are like the fajita size like wraps, but you could definitely go bigger on it. And then you don't have to make quite as many if you wanted a bigger Hulk ones. I like to make the little ones because, you know, we have a lot of kids here, and like my little ones will eat one of those, like my, you know, almost 2 and 4-year-old, but my older kids will eat like 2 or 3. So it you know, gives you options. That way you're not committing on a big one with waste. There we go. Okay, let's whip up our guacamole real quick. I'm gonna give my hands a quick wash. And I'm just gonna use 2 avocados today. 2 of my avocados weren't quite ready yet. I'll just slice it open. Now, you know, most of the time when you buy your avocados from the store, they're like rock hard. And so I always leave mine out on the counter until they are nice and they can push into them and you've got like a little bit of a give. And then I pop them in the fridge. That way they'll last a lot longer. Because avocados on the counter, I swear, they will be ripe and then an hour later, they're like bad. They go bad so fast. So I just make sure you leave them for a day or 2 and then you pop them in the fridge. And I will say, typically it's just a day. Very rarely have I had to leave them for 2 days before they've ripened up. There we go. Scrape these guys out. And for my guacamole, I keep it really, really simple. It's just gonna be fresh lime juice and garlic salt. But let's check on my little wraps here, see if they need flipping yet. Just a little bit longer. I want them to have a nice kind of golden brown sear, and I'm gonna turn them up to about a 4.5. I feel like these are ones that you kind of have to watch and go up and down on them. We're gonna use, since it's just 2, I'm just gonna squeeze 1/2 of a lime over, or yeah, so 1/2 of a lime. And you wanna just get all that good juice out. If it's a dry lime, which happens a lot, then you're gonna wanna use a whole one. And this fresh lime juice is gonna give you that citrus kick, but it's also gonna prevent it from going brown, which is key. And then we're gonna do a good shake of garlic salt over it. And I'm just gonna mash it up with my fork. I find the fork works really well for giving you that right consistency of guacamole, because you don't want it to be too smooth. You want it to be not super lumpy, but that in there where you have little bits of chunks, but not really big ones. So that fork gives you that good texture on it. Because I'm not a big fan of guacamole that's been whipped smooth. I feel like it's much more natural with it. Okay, let's flip these next ones over because they should be just about ready. There we go. Perfect, we got this nice golden crisp on it for it. And then we have our pumpkin muffins. They've now cooled. We just took them out of the oven. We made these with a 1/2 cup of sourdough discard and melted butter. And the flavors that we get in there not only come from the pumpkin, which is a whole cup in here, but a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice and the brown sugar, those really give it a rich body and flavor that make them delicious. Okay. Now, we've just about have our guacamole kind of whipped up here. Perfect. I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a taste to see if we need to add any more salt. Good. Perfect amount of lime in there. And now let's kind of cook these off. This chicken, although it might seem like a very little, we'll probably make about 12 of these little flauta things. So that's kind of the nice part about it is Let's actually get a lot out of just 2 chicken kind of fillets here. So look, we've got it. Nice, beautiful, crispy crust on both sides. You want to make sure you crisp them up nice so they have that good crunch, otherwise they'll have that soft crunch. Like over here in my pan right here, this one needs to cook up a bit more because this will be chewy and not crunchy. So we're gonna let that kind of cook for just a little bit longer, but I'm gonna grab my plate and get ready to serve up. Okay, let's see. Let's do it over here since we have a little bit more room. I'll bring my plate of flautas and my guacamole. And let me just check this guy because I think he is ready to come off. Yep, perfect. Look, now we've got that beautiful golden brown color to it. Okay, let's serve up. So today for lunch, we are having our Southwest chicken flautas that we will be dipping in our homemade guacamole, which is just super simple: avocados, lime, and garlic salt. Our Southwest chicken flautas are stuffed with our chicken, corn, pepper, onion blend with cheddar cheese in there, so you've got a nice ooey gooey pull in there as well. And then we will be serving them for, of course, our little dessert here with our pumpkin muffins. We have our raw pumpkin seeds on the top, kind of got to mimic Starbucks there, but they are full of pumpkin. They have sourdough discard in it. Those great spices from the pumpkin spice and the brown sugar just give you that fall taste in your mouth. And I know it's the middle of summer, but when my kids ask, I must deliver. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link on our page and watch the video that we cooked again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our cooking gear and gadgets in it. I have my spatulas, my hex-clad pans are in there, my muffin tin, all the different gadgets I use in the kitchen I have in my Amazon storefront for you guys to check out. Well, guys, thank you again for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.